Hi there, it's Kevin with GatheringMagic.com with another episode of the Rogues Alley. If a lot of you might be familiar with my YouTube channel, Rogue Deck Builder, YouTube/Rogue Deck Builder, I do a top 10 list of cards that I'm looking forward to brew around whenever a new set comes out. And for this one, I actually chose one of the cards on my top 10 list was the Bedlam Reveler. So I thought I'd give the Bedlam Reveler a go. So if you're interested in seeing that top 10 list, you can go ahead and check out my YouTube channel. And I'm going to try to do a brew for every one of these cards that I chose for my top 10 list. So some of them will be on the Gathering Magic channel for Rogues Alley or Playing on a Budget. And some of them will be over at my channel at the Rogue Deck Builder. So anyway, this card caught my interest because it's an 8 mana, but you can easily reduce the cost of the Reveler. I'm thinking this is going to rarely cost more than like 4 for a 3/4 that also draws cards, or you discard your hand, then draw 3 cards. So I think it fits perfectly in a red shell that wants to unload its hand. And so we're going to try kind of a burn/madness deck. Excuse me. And also, it's just, we're playing a lot of value creatures in here. I've been brewing for probably about 2 hours, I would say, with different cards to put in this deck, and have come up with this list just because I think it interacts the best with Bedlam Reveler. You're going to be out of cards, basically what we call Hellbent, and this basically is just going to say draw 3 cards. A lot of the cards also work quite well with Madness, as there's going to be 8 Madness cards in the deck with Fiery Temper and Alms of the Vein. So if you have to cast them with the Bedlam Reveler, these are just 1 mana Madness spells that you actually will still get some value from. So, yeah, there might be a better way to build this. I've seen some Bedlam Reveler builds that just run like a lot of like Fiery Impulses and the new Galvanic Bombardment for early control, and then just use the Bedlam Reveler to refill up the hand and then start going the face with the rest of the burn spell. I'm also going to run a Goblin Dark-Dwellers because any sort of deck that is running instant or sorcery spells is going to want a Goblin Dark-Dwellers to then be able to flash back. It's sort of a non-bow with Bedlam Reveler with the Goblin Dark-Dwellers. What we mean by that is the Goblin Dark-Dwellers is exiling, so it's going to actually make it harder for a Bedlam Reveler to be cast, but I don't think that's going to be that significant. I also decided to forego Tormenting Voice, which might be a mistake because Tormenting Voice usually will put 2 instant sorceries in the graveyard because you're most likely going to discard an early Madness card. But on turn 3, you want to be doing something more significant than a Fiery Temper and Alms of the Vein. So, yeah. Anyway, we'll just go down the deck list here. We're going to run our premier removal spell for 1 drop is going to be Lightning Axe. Instant speed, 5 damage to a creature, deals with everything in the format. There are very few things that go above the 5 toughness. It will kill the Avacyn, it will kill the Gisellas, it will kill Thought-Knot Seers, and basically anything out of the Bant Company list. It will kill any human, and it's just 1 mana, and then it's not that big of a deal if we have to discard a card. We have a ton of card advantage again through the Goblin Dark-Dwellers, the Bedlam Reveler. The Kolaghan's Command can actually get a creature back if you have to discard an early Dark-Dwellers or something, go for it. Kolaghan's Command will get it back. And we have plenty of lands. We have a 24 land count too, so our curve is pretty good to just chuck lands and we'll be just fine. So that is going to be our go-to, one of our go-to Madness enablers as well. And then we are running like a 1 of Avacyn Judgment. So like a Lightning Axe is also perfect, like really late game. So you have like 6 available mana. You can actually do like 4 damage with Avacyn's Judgment off of like a Lightning Axe with the Madness. So it's one mana for the Lightning Axe, 1 mana for the Avacyn's Judgment, and then you can dump 4 more mana. So yeah, into the Avacyn Judgment. So I like the Judgment too. It's just it's really good versus spirits. Early you can kill 2 1-drop spirits, like the Rattle Chains and the Mausoleum Wanderer. So we do want some sort of damage splitting. I think it's just better than stuff like Dual Shot. I think this card's a bit underrated, and we're going to just try a 1 of. It works okay with the Goblin Dark-Dwellers. Again, it's a 2 damage spell, not too shabby for just 2 mana. And so again, I'm just going to try a few 1-ofs to see how well they work in the deck. Another Madness enabler is Collective Brutality. I think this card does everything you want it to do in the format. There's going to be very few decks that it's going to be dead against. Humans, not really, because you can just use the mode of -2/-2, and an opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. Against the Collected Company decks, they're usually running like Dromoka's Command and Collective Company, and a few of them are still running some other instants or sorceries here and there. But I mean, those have been pretty staple in those Bant Company lists, and especially you need to get rid of Collected Company. So on turn 2, you can actually kill off like the 2/2, the werewolf, the one that lets you look for more, or a tracker. You could easily kill off a tracker, a tireless tracker, and also get rid of a card or instant sorcery card out of their hand just by, again, discarding a card. So it's something that the Reveler, the card disadvantage, is not going to be that big of a deal later on. We're getting that fast Reveler out and then refilling back up your hand. So we're going to try 4 of, and if it doesn't work out as a 4 of, we can easily go back down to a 2 of. But again, most of the decks, instant sorceries are very relevant. We're going to be able to get those out. The only deck the deck that I don't think it's going to be very good against is maybe green-white tokens, which is still Tragic Arrogance. Tragic Arrogance doesn't hurt our deck too much, but it's still, there's still Dromoka's Command in that one, still Declaration and Stones, a few things here and there that are worthwhile to actually take out of their hand. The next card, so we've talked about the 8 Madness cards we're going to run. Next card, Nahiri's Wrath. This is another Madness enabler that I think is really, really powerful. And especially with the Bedlam Reveler, this is 8 damage that you can divide. So it's an earlier, almost Languish-ish type card. It's very good. It will wipe a humans board, and it will wipe a spirit board as well. Might not wipe the Collected Company, and it is kind of bad versus these Spell Queller, because then if it does get countered and you do kill the Spell Queller, you're getting no value out of it, because it's an additional cost. You have to discard cards. But this almost feels like a 5th Lightning Axe, and at that, it can definitely be hugely powerful, just being able to split it. Again, I just really like it with the Bedlam Reveler synergy. Just 8 damage divided. It doesn't do it to players, but creatures and planeswalkers. So again, it's going to be just our main board card that has like a Languish type effect, and just a 1 of I think is fine. If it ends up not being very good, we can definitely cut it. So next one, we're going to run of a 1 of Collective Defiance. I'm not sure how I feel about this card in this deck so far. It seems almost like what's the card? The Landfall card. 3 damage to a creature and 3 damage to an opponent. This is going to be, but it'll take 4 mana to do so. But it is sorcery speed on instant speed, which is a bit tricky with this card. But the 4 damage to a creature, which again is most things in the format, and 3 damage to an opponent, I think it's huge in a burn type of strategy with Alms and Fiery Temper, because we can always just switch gears and go to the face with these type of cards. It's going to be pretty good versus control. What I really like is it kills Kalatas and still does damage to an opponent. It will kill a tracker, a tireless tracker, and still do damage. It's still an advocate early on. Lots of creatures is going to be able to, when you want to cast it for 4, it's going to get the job done. So the next one, Kolaghan's Command, is just in here for value. Again, I don't know if these want to be a 4 of, because I think they're incredibly powerful right now in the format. We can kind of switch gears. I've got this built that it has a little bit of a discard type effect to it against control. You can actually eat their hand a little bit and still get value. So I don't know how well that's going to be in the metagame, because again, most of the metagame is this kind of aggro mid-rangey type feel to it. Like company decks can take you out pretty quickly. Same with spirits, same with green-white tokens. So you don't really go to the late game in this format, and that's where Kolaghan's Command really shines. But I think that it is a 2 of at least, with the ability to get back a Bedlam Reveler that you discarded early, or even a Goblin Dark-Dwellers, is pretty huge in this deck. So on to the creatures, we're going to run a 3 of Goblin Dark-Dwellers. I had 4 of at the moment, but I wanted, instead of 23 lands, I really wanted to get up to 24, and I think that 4 of might just be a little bit overkill. We do have a lot of value with the Goblin Dark-Dwellers, but again, I think the 3 of is the right slot, because having the 9 creatures, I think it is less powerful than the Bedlam Reveler, and we want the Reality Smasher. So why I like Reality Smasher in this deck is it is probably one of the best creatures in the format. It's a mess for Collected Company to really, those type of decks to deal with, because it does have haste, and it's really hard to block, and especially if you've done Collective Brutalities, Alms of the Vein, even Fiery Tempers of the Face, Reality Smasher can easily be like a turn 2 clock. So I think it works perfectly curving into this as the top end for this deck. And it's not too tough to cast because we have Battlefield Forges and Shivan Reefs that can easily use the colorless mana to cast it. And I'm also running the Gear Reach Sanitarium, which also has this little madness type effect with the Alms and the Fiery Tempers. And I'm trying a one of Mirrorpool too, with I think Reality Smasher is pretty cool with the Mirrorpool. But so is the Reveler, so is the Goblin Dark-Dwellers. But you can easily just, on the turn 5, cast a Reality Smasher, and turn 6, a Mirrorpool Reality Smasher, and then tack in for another, so 10 damage on that turn. But where this does shine is the Sacrifice Mirrorpool copying instant or sorcery spell. Late game, you could easily copy even a Fire Temper and Exquisite Firecraft, Collective Defiance, all those copied with the Mirrorpool are pretty good value. So that's where we need to find, like, I don't know if Exquisite Firecraft needs to be more of than just a one of. I think it's a little bit, we don't want our curve so top heavy because that's where our creatures are going to kind of curving out. And so we want more early game, and Exquisite Firecraft turn 3 is the same time that opponents are going to start to cast. If they're on their turn 4, it's like Gideon, it's Collected Company, and so it doesn't really do what you want to be doing on your turn 3 a lot of times, but I do like just the 4 damage to the face. So I think that this could easily be more of in the deck. We'll have to just wait and see how well it works and what cards. I mean, this is more of a test phase than anything. We're testing what cards work, what cards don't, and then we'll kind of make edits as we go. So I'll probably just be playing this in the 2-man, and then again just be looking for subtle edits during the matches to see how we adjust to the metagame. So on to the sideboard. The sideboard, we can switch gears for more of the control route. Reality Smasher and Thought-Knot Seer do very well against the mid-range type decks. Both of these cards do very well against green-white tokens, as Reality Smasher is just a pain for green-white tokens to really block. Gideon is easily, we can actually just go through them. A lot of times with the green-white walkers, they don't gain some decks run Pulse, but they don't really have a lot of gain life type effects, so you can just keep doing damage to the face, damage to the face, damage to the face, and you just ignore their planeswalkers with Reality Smasher getting in for that last bit of damage. The Thought-Knot Seer can take out specific cards, so if there's any sort of ramp type strategy, like a crush type strategy, Thought-Knot Seer can ruin that. It's a 2 of in the deck. We have Kolaghan's Command that can discard cards. Prying Questions is a card that I want to test out too, just because I think that the card is extremely powerful. It becomes like kind of our 5th Kolaghan's Command, because target opponent loses 3 life and puts a card from his or her hand on top of his library. So that's discard, with a little bit of upside that it doesn't go in their graveyard. Just kind of screws up their curve, screws up. They have to put a card back on top, and then they have to draw that card the next turn. So do not underestimate that ability, and the 3 life I think is what's really. This is just a test card against like the control. It's another 3 damage spell that also has a little bit of an advantage to it. I'm going to run a Self-Inflicted Wound just because it seems like that most of the decks are actually running either green or white creatures. So a 2 of, this is going to be another early removal spell, probably bring in versus Coco decks and most likely against humans. Spirits, I'm not too sold on it because a lot of the cards and spirits that we want to kill early are blue, but it does take care of Avacyn, and it does take care of the Spellqueller. So I think that Self-Inflicted Wound is very underrated again at this moment. We're running a 3 of Languishes, spirits, humans, Collected Company. Another Nahiri's Wrath, spirits, humans, Collected Company. Collective Defiance is going to come in more versus control type decks. I'm thinking more Kalatos based decks, as this takes care of it and still does damage. Kolaghan's Command is just going to be value against control-based decks, and then the Reality Smashers and again Thought-Knot Seers will come in versus the mid-range. From underneath the Floorboard as well, I think is a card that can come in versus control. It's another card I just want to test because it just seems like it has a ton of synergy with all of the cards. I had it in the main at one point, but it just didn't seem to do very well against most of the decks that we're going to be facing in this current meta. But it's definitely a great card, especially with Call the Bloodline. It makes it instant speed. This is the combination that I'm pretty obsessed with, is from one of the Floorboards and Call the Bloodline. I am going to make a deck with what is it called? The Voldaren Pariah, which is the vampire that you can sacrifice 3 creatures to make your opponent sacrifice 3 creatures, transform it into a 6/5. I'm gonna focus another brew on the Call the Bloodline and from one of the floorboards that will have more of that interaction. So be looking forward to that. But for now, we just have 1 in the sideboard. I'll bring it in versus the heavy control based decks. Call the Bloodline is a 1 of in the main. I love this card. It's just a discard outlet. It gets rid of like late game. It can actually stabilize you quite early and has really good synergy with Fiery Temper and Alms. So anyway, that's the gist of the deck. This has kind of been a longer deck tech at 15 minutes. We'll go on to some matchups. This has been Kevin with GatheringMagic.com. Thanks for watching.